Hi, this is David. Today I want to do another repair on my Tesla Model S. It's something that actually applies to equally to the Model X, Model 3, pretty much any car, any modern car, because it's about a suspension rattle that I noticed. It took me a while to figure it out. Turned out to be the sway bar links that are connected to the suspension, and they were worn out and starting to rattle. Nothing really like dangerous or critical. It's more a cosmetic thing, but eventually I had to swap it out. Finding that out was actually not quite as easy. There's a lot of things that can cause rattles, and when I noticed I had some suspension rattle, I was going online looking through some discussions online. I looked at other YouTube videos about the issue, and there is actually a lot of causes for that. Especially the front suspension has a lot of moving parts, a lot of bearings, a lot of things can cause rattles, and they sound pretty much the same. It's very hard to figure out what is what. One very useful video I found was over that's a German guy. He's very knowledgeable with Tesla, and he had some rattles, and he had a device that was really interesting. It was basically microphones that were attached to little clips, and then you had several of them. You can clip them onto different parts of the suspension, and then you had a box with headphones, and then you can switch to the different microphones and listen to them as you were driving and figure out where the noise is actually coming from. So that was a really very eye-opening video. Unfortunately, I don't have that tool, so I couldn't use that. What I ended up doing is just by listening to it and finding out where and when the rattle is coming from, I was able to pinpoint it to the links of the sway bar, and it turned out those are actually worn out. I confirmed that. I'm going to show you where they are and what they do. A sway bar is basically a rod with two arms that goes from the left wheel to the right wheel. There's one in the front and one for the back wheels. And then through two links they're connected to the suspension. And what it does, it basically syncs the motion of the left wheel with the right wheel, or opposite way, the right wheel with the left wheel. So when one starts to move, the other one is kind of synced in its motion with through the sway bar. Now, when I first learned about a sway bar, that's what they put into cars, and pretty much every car, I was surprised, because isn't that the point of a suspension, that you have individual movements of each wheel when you go through bumps and stuff like that? And obviously that is true. What the sway bar is for is, imagine you're going through a turn. You're going through a fast left turn. What you notice, you'll feel a force of you getting pushed to the outside of the turn, in this case to the right side. And the car, especially older cars, you will see that when they go through, let's say, a left turn, they will kind of lean to the right. Now, this is a natural thing. This is just physics. Every time you make a turn, mass is kind of slow and wants to keep going straight. So when you make a left turn, for instance, it feels like you're going, you're pushed or pulled to the outside. So to prevent these cars from leaning into the curves or to the outside of the curves, which is actually really bad, they introduced these sway bars that sync it. So when the car starts to lean to the outside and the suspension on the right side is pushed in because there's more weight on it, basically the sway bar will stabilize the car. It will try to push it back into a stable position. So when you go through a turn, the sway bar will make the car stay more stable and go through the turn in a better way. That's really important. The independent movement is not completely disabled. The sway bar is not completely rigid. It's not a stiff thing. There's some flex in it. So you can still go through bumps and you have individual motion of the suspension, but in turns it really helps to keep your car stable on the road. Anyway, so much about the sway bars. Let's go in and look at the links, and I'm going to show you how to replace them and how they look. To get to the sway bar links, you have to take off the wheel. Unfortunately, you can't just take one wheel off at a time and do that. As I said, these sway bars are syncing the suspension, so if you jack up just one corner and bring that up, then you have a lot of tension on that sway bar trying to sync the the suspension travel between the front wheels, and if you jack just one up, there's just too much tension, you won't be able to get that out. So what you have to do, you have to lift the whole, like the front up, both wheels at the same time. You go through the center and lift that up, and then you do the same for the back wheels. I got the parts from my favorite place, from Autobahn Dismantling. He's close to San Diego. He also has an eBay store. I'm going to put the link to his website down there. He's a great guy. He's really, really great, a great source for used Tesla parts. What he does, he buys salvaged cars, so cars that were in crashes and totaled, and he takes the parts out that are still good, and usually they have very little use, and then he sells them, and that's much cheaper than getting a new part. And for many parts, that's really totally fine, you know. The sway bar links that I got from him look really great, so I'm sure they're going to last for a long time. Anyway, so let's get started. Hi Daisy. Daisy's over there for our videos. So I'm finally wearing some gloves to get my fingers less dirty. Unfortunately, I can only find left one, L. I looked everywhere, I can't find a right one. If you know where to find right gloves, let me know. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just using the left one and put them on the right hand. I don't know. Not ideal, but I guess it works. So let me know if you find some right gloves. Anyways, I'm going to take the wheel off, and then we're going to look inside and see where the sway bar links go in. Okay, so got the wheel off. Let's see if we can turn this guy a little bit. Oh, not really. All right. So let's take a look and see. This piece here is the end of the sway bar. You can see that here comes out, goes down here, and then let's see. This piece here is the link. And that's worn out, and then I'm going to replace that with a new one. Here's what you need. You need a jack to lift up the front of the car. You need some metric tools. Everything on Tesla is metric. You need a 10mm wrench. You need a 5mm Allen. God, those are tight. As you can see, the thing comes out super easy. That's it. This is the part I just took out. Here you can see why it's rattling. The rubber here is completely ripped. Well, not completely, halfway. Focus. And water and dirt got in. And this here is... It's hard to hear, but it's basically moving. There's some play, there's some free room for it. It should be super tight and should be able to move like that, but there should be no play whatsoever, no room to move. And I don't know. This one's moving. This one's toast. Here we go. Alright, replacing them is the exact same way. Just make sure you put them in the right way. I believe starting with the top might be easier. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I put in both new links and both sides front. Didn't do the back yet. I believe that it might only be the front, but let's see. So I put everything in, turned the air conditioning off. Everything is off so I can hear better. Gonna do a little test drive now. Let's see if I still hear that noise that I heard before. I think it's gone. Yeah, usually I hear it already here. Yeah, that was it. God, it's hot. Can't turn on the air conditioning because otherwise I don't hear it. Alright, it's usually on this road. It's not actually a very bumpy road that I need to hear it. It's just tiny little like tiny little bumps that make the road a little bit uneven from left to right side, which causes one or the other wheel to be a little higher than the other. So speed bumps and stuff like that, or like, you know, bumps that go on both wheels, you don't hear anything because the motion of both suspension arms is the same. It's the tiny little bumps where the sway bar tries to sink it. And then, all right, here we go. Usually on this section of the road, I hear it very clearly. Yeah. Nothing. Perfect. All right, that was a great success. Both front sway bar links fixed the problem for me completely. I don't hear the noise anymore at all. So I don't think I'm going to even bother with the rear ones because the rattle is completely gone. So that tells me that the rear links and sway bar connections are all fine. I don't hear any rattling at all from the suspension, so nothing else seems to be broken. As I said in the beginning, there's a lot of different parts and places and a lot of different issues that can cause a rattle in suspension that all sounds very similar. It could be even like a loose brake pad or the brake calipers, or there's a lot of different bearings with all different degrees of freedom that can wear out, and especially since it's close to the wheel where there's a lot of dirt and water, if one of those rubber seals starts to break, which was the case in my case, that's what I think the source was. Once dirt comes in, then those bearings start to wear out really quick. So I don't really have a foolproof method to figure out what rattle points to what. In my case, it was the tiny little bumps, not the big bumps, not the ones that cause a lot of suspension travel. In my case, it was when one wheel or the other wheel, just one wheel had tiny little bumps. And that told me, like, when there's tiny little uneven bumps between the two wheels, that's when the sway bar is in action and tries to sink it, and there is movement between those, and that's when I heard the rattle the most, and that told me it's got to be something to do with the sway bar. There's other kinds of rattles that, you know, that can be caused by all kinds of other things. That's just the way I figured out the problem that I have. By the way, most of the suspension rattles are at low speeds, which doesn't mean that they only occur at low speeds. That's actually a problem in general. When you have some noise coming from various parts of the cars, people always say, oh, at low speeds, that's when it happens. The reason you hear it at low speeds is because there's no other noises. There's no noises from the tires and the wind and stuff like that. Once you start driving faster, all the other noises basically mask the noise that you're trying to pinpoint. And so people always think, oh, it's the low speed, it has anything to do with it, but it's just, you just hear it at low speed better than at high speed. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Again, if you need used Tesla parts that are in good shape, check out the link that I put in there. Henry is a great guy and good prices, and he stands behind his products. There was one thing that I needed exchange because there was something, and he was like, no problem at all. He's a great guy. So anyways, that's all I have for today. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.